Hi, welcome everyone to this post-lunch panel. Today we're going to be talking about gender-based violence and online intimidation. My name is Ruhia Seward. I'm a senior program officer at the International Development Research Center. And on this subject, actually, we support a lot of work on how to foster an inclusive and equitable digital public sphere. And in some of our research, we have been learning a lot about what's happening in global majority countries with women, particularly female public figures, journalists, and anyone who identifies outside of a cultural norm. So we know that they're the most targeted with harassment and violence, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. But also, as many people have pointed out in the last day and a half, what happens online is not really separate from what happens on the ground. These are mutually reinforcing realities of harassment and violence. And journalists, who are some of the most targeted, they are translators of what's happening on the ground and in the digital public sphere. And so when they're attacked online, it has a real chilling effect, and it causes a lot of fear and a range of other kinds of harms. So with that in mind, I want to welcome my distinguished panelists. Here on my right is Raed Sharif, the MENA Regional Program Manager at the SECTA Foundation. Thank you, Raed. Dr. Raed Sharif. On my immediate left is Rania Sareira, who is the coordinator for the Jordanian Network to Combat Digital Violence Against Female Journalists, and also the program manager at the Tamkeen Foundation for Human Rights and Legal Aid. And on my far left over here is Elodie Vial, a journalist and an independent consultant and senior advisor for digital safety and free expression with PEN America. So, we're going to be discussing how you're all confronting the challenges of digital violence against women. But maybe just before turning to that, I want to just ask Elodie briefly to give us what we're talking about with regard to harassment online.
Thank you so much, Roya. And I feel very blessed, honored to be with all of you today. And I just want to say that as a journalist and a press freedom defender, I believe in journalistic solidarity, and I stand with all of you, mourning the loss of our colleagues. You asked me so about the gender-based violence, intimidations, and digital violence. At PEN America, we talk about online abuse or online harassment, and we consider this as the pervasive or severe targeting of an individual or group online through harmful behavior. So it means that the attack online can come from an individual or a group of individuals, and the result, as you say, is intimidation. The goal is to discredit the journalist, to silence the journalist. And what we observe is, in terms of tactic, because online harassment, digital attacks, this is a big term, but if we unpack this term and think about the tactics, we observe tactics like doxing. Doxing, this is when people, they take personal information on you online, and they try to discredit you using this information. It can be the list of your friends in Facebook, it can be a picture, a phone number, and so that's an important, but we have also hate speech, we have non-consensual intimate image, which are widely used, photoshopped, and used against women journalists to discredit them and to silence them.
Thank you, Elodie. Thank you. So, we're going to sort of divide this into challenges and solutions. So, Rania, please tell us about the situation in Jordan and how your network is dealing with the challenges.
Okay, thank you. I will speak in Arabic if you don't mind. مساء الخير جميعا.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, let me tell you about our network to combat digital violence in Jordan. It was established in October last year, and frankly speaking, its establishment was the fruit of recommendations generated by a survey in which participated around 200 journalists from Jordan and outside Jordan. I mean, all journalists, female journalists working in Jordan, and it was the survey was about the digital and non-digital violence faced by female journalists, and at least 20% of female journalists in Jordan said that they have been subjected to digital violence, and 13% were not really sure about it, and they were not sure whether what they have faced was forms of violence, and 76% of female journalists reported violence to their institutions, and they confirmed that their corresponding institutions take or took no measure, no action due to the lack of the legislations or rules or systems to protect these journalists. And of course, these figures were really huge for us, and this is what really pushed us to launch this network. 89% actually of female journalists said that they were not trained, they did not follow training on protection against this form of violence, and the conclusion was to provide female journalists with a safety space in Jordan so as to be able to understand digital violence and how to defend themselves, and what are the measures or legal or societal or even psychological, measures. And by the way, regarding the mental level or psychological level, with the psychological impact, many female journalists learned that or said that they shut down their platforms because of being subjected to digital violence, where actually it is noteworthy is that most of us use accounts on social media, electronic accounts, not on the personal level, but just as a source of information. And sometimes it's a mixture of personal and professional accounts. The network currently includes more than 173 Jordanian and non-Jordanian female journalists, with the main purpose of raising awareness in terms of digital safety for female journalists, and not only journalists. Sometimes in our training courses or consultancy or recommendations, sometimes we count on the participation of the male journalists. On the other hand, another important thing is that it's not limited anymore to digital violence, but it also encompasses other topics such as the non-access to decision making. I'm talking about female journalists, and it's now a high topic of discussion right now in Jordan. And honestly speaking, there is something that I'm particularly proud of is the support, the mutual support on the professional and non-professional level. And some members do have a 2 years experience, and some others do enjoy more than 25 years of experience. So the mutual, this exchange of information and knowledge and experience is of utmost importance.
Shukran, Rania. And also, just as a quick follow-up too, we had a gathering in February of this year with a group of parliamentarians called FemParl, and literally all of the, from across the MENA region, and all of the women, all of the MPs had experienced this in their political parties. basically told them it was part of what they had to deal with, and there wasn't really any receptivity. So it's an ongoing challenge. But Raed, so tell me what you're finding with the research that you're supporting across the region.
Thank you, Ruhaya, and good afternoon. Marhaba jami'an. My name is Raed Sharif. I am the director of the Middle East and North Africa division at the SAGDA Foundation. And we aim at the foundation to make the internet safer for everybody around the world, including, or especially the marginalized communities. Thank you, Ruhaya. This question is very important. What we've been doing across the Middle East and North Africa with really generous support and funding from the International Development Research Center is that we're trying to unpack the complexities, and I would emphasize the complexities. It's not only one complex thing, it's multiple complexities related to the online gender-based violence in the Middle East and North Africa. And you all know some of those complexities are related to our history, to our culture, to multiple factors, really. And we needed to understand what's going on and to be able to provide solutions. So with that research that we're doing and also interventions, so far we have profiled and studied 17 Arab countries. And we've done legal analysis of the text already of 2 countries, and we are in the process of also doing another 2 countries. And we have at least 7 to 8 case studies, and I will explain right now. What our research shows is very, very alarming rate of digital violence against women across all age groups, across all countries, and all professions. Really, nobody is spared from hate speech, from blackmailing, from harassment, from doxing. Nobody is spared. On average, in the Middle East, we found that 60% of women that we talk to, 60%, this is 6 out of 10, have experienced at least one form of digital violence. And when we talk about the conflict zones, and we have plenty of those in the Middle East and North Africa, the rate goes to 80%. This is literally 4 out of 5 women, they experience that. And that's why it's really alarming. And we've talked to people through surveys and interviews and focus groups, and the results keep coming and coming to confirm that the situation is unbearable, really, and it's extending. So if a mother is being blackmailed or intimidated, with the consequences that I'll be talking about, her family is affected, her colleagues are affected. So those percentages are the ones that we know about, but really what is unreported or underreported is even more. It gets worse with public figure women. So we also provide in case studies politicians, women in politics, journalists, heads of CSOs, women who are in public figure, and we found that the rates are more and the kind and the nature of attacks are more. If you're a politician, you're always attacked. Well, no matter what you say, there's someone there sitting and ready, whether they agree with you or not. And the attacks are really what we're finding interesting. So if a male politician is attacked online, it's mostly about their integrity, about their competence, about something about work. But if a female politician is attacked, it's about her honor and about her appearance. That's the starting point. And that extends to their family. So if they don't manage to get the public figure, a journalist, an MP, a head of a CSO, they turn to their partners, to their husbands, to their brothers, to their family, which creates an unbelievable amount of pressure on them, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Another point that is very important is that when you get to the conflict zone, you have even an added layer of complexity. And I'll just give 2 examples. In Palestine, we found that women who are attacked, before even get to know, what to do and how to do it, they have to navigate a legal system in Palestine, where are we going to go to the system in Gaza or the West Bank or in Israel? Just to answer this question by itself is a challenge, right? We found that in Iraq, women are being attacked because people would know from your family name that you're from the north and you're displaced in the south and you're not welcome. So you see, we have all the problems in the Middle East, but when you're in a conflict zone, it becomes even more. Right now, as we speak, by the way, It's very unfortunate that I say that. In Syria, and my friends and colleagues here, they would know, there is a camp, it's called the widow's camp. Imagine it's labeled a widow's camp. So these are women who lost their husbands, and they live together. So imagine that movement from the online to the offline. Now they know that they're widows, they're vulnerable, and now they're being attacked online. And this really leads to catastrophic results. Economically, women, heads of businesses, they're finding it's difficult. Politically, we've actually documented cases of women withdrawing their candidacy from being, in the elections. And of course, psychosocial. It's all the way from anxiety, not being able to sleep, self-doubt, all the way to death. We've had cases of death in the Middle East and North Africa. So really the situation is really dire in the Middle East and North Africa. And I will just quickly, Rahia, get to the challenges. Whenever we talk about digital violence or online violence against women, I personally like to put it in 3 dimensions. These are very important for me. The number one, I will start with the easy one, the technical and the educational one. Because this one, in my opinion, we can do much more about it. But what we found, majority of women, and I can actually assure you that even men, they lack the basic skills and understanding of how to protect their devices and their accounts.
Yes.
And that's the number one risk vulnerability, the entry point. As simple as a strong password or two-factor authentication, you would be surprised. We've worked with journalists, they've been in the field for 20 plus years. And she told me that her password is from 2014, never changed, the same one. And she even joked with me that the password actually very easy. Can you guess? I said, I'm not going to guess, okay? Two-factor authentication, how to protect your account online. So this is the basic, the skills and knowledge there. You ask me about schools and universities, please don't get me there, okay? We don't even teach much about that. Moving to the governance and legal. Laws, yes, we have some probably touching upon digital violence, cybercrime, but they're nowhere close to addressing the real issues. Even worse, our judges, lawyers, and cybercrime units are not even trained to understand the complexity of digital violence. So even if a woman dares to go to one of those authorities, in fact, we were told multiple times that they regret. I'll tell you another thing. A cybercrime unit in the Arab world, it's all men. They have absolutely no gender training. So the moment the case comes, they keep the victim living the victimization over and over again. Tell me what happened, show me the picture. Tell me that what happened, and you can imagine the impact on them. And the last one, which in my opinion is the most important, the crucial, the missing link. So you don't have the preparations, the education, the skills, and you fall a victim to this, and you're in the middle of crisis. We don't have the psychosocial support that is needed. Really, our organizations don't have the capacity to deal with either victims or survivors. You go there and they start having this listening skills, the counseling, that if the violence was actually someone hit you or harassed you in the street. And we all know that this is not the case. With the digital world, it's completely different. So really, it's kind of very complex, but very sad all over the place, unfortunately. I'm sorry, I'll have probably some good news in the next question, I promise.
No, thank you, Rayed. Thanks for giving us an idea of what's happening here in the MENA. And so now I'm just going to pull out of the MENA region, and I'm going to turn to Elodie to tell us that the situation globally.
Yes, this trend observed in the region, we can reflect also globally that this is a global thread and threat also. Over the last few years, we observed a rise of this online violence against journalists, and in particular against women journalists. And UNESCO did research 2 years ago, documenting the situation worldwide, and 73% of women journalists are harassed online, and what we observe is also a direct connection between this online violence and offline violence. And what you said as an introduction is this is not only happening online, this can lead to direct physical violence. And according to this UNESCO report, 20% of women journalists attacked physically offline said that it was connected to the online violence they received. So the International Women's Media Foundation also found out that 1 out of 3 women journalists consider leaving the profession because of this kind of violence. So we, as said in this panel, this leads to, this violence is real and leads to self-censorship. And women journalists refrain themselves from covering certain topic, from being visible online. But we also observe that now young journalists and young students, they maybe consider twice before going into this profession. We know that all the risks and all the pressure on journalism today, but this is one that is more maybe complicated to monitor because it's a kind of self-censorship.
Yeah, and I think also something that hasn't come up as much too is that the perpetrators, or some, you know, it's both kind of individual trolls and you know, kind of people on ground, but in civil society. But there's also a component of sometimes it comes from the state as well, which our colleagues at the earlier panel also talked about. So, you know, it's also hard to tackle it because how do we grapple with these challenges of honoring the need for free expression, which is so important and under threat in so many places, and yet also provide security and safety for everyone to express themselves online, like women and journalists and female leaders and anyone who's not, you know, who falls outside the norm. So I feel like, you know, getting to the solutions is a really big challenge. So I'm going to try to turn to that now, regardless of knowing how challenging it is, and ask you, Rania, to tell us what kind of solutions you've been experimenting with in Jordan.
اوكي شكرا ثانك يو. بس في البدايه بدي احكي نقطه كثير مهمه انا بشوفها من وجهه نظري بعد سنه او حوالي سنتين من الشغل على موضوع العنف الرقمي ضد الصحفيات. هي مساله
It's a matter of underestimating these issues regarding legal level or society level or in the media environment that we're going through. How underestimating this? We find out on our daily basis experiences when a female journalist complaining for her chief editor or her boss or for a colleague that she's been harassed digitally. He might either, it's only digital violence, he didn't touch you, he didn't beat you. Or he can say, they are a journalist. You are supposed to face these kind of challenges, be stronger. This is underestimating the environment media, this kind of violence. Pay attention for it. Regarding legislation in this issue, there are more than one level. We have to talk about cyber crimes codes, and this code has been mended 5 months ago in Jordan. It was mended. 15, 16, and 17 talks about penalties for who are violate other articles of this code. This code has no definitions. When it say hate speech are penalized with 20,000 dinars or to imprison more than 2 years or both penalties, what happens that he's threatening community peace. What is the definition of hate speech? There are no definitions in this act. So this next year it will be to the judiciary system. Even judges have the problem if the terms are not identified. About the digital violence, whether in the labor code or cyber criminal code, there are no definitions for penalties of the violence. There's no article talking about if a journalist has been a victim of digital violence by social media, but because of her as a socialist, where can we go to? They consider the attacker is not under the umbrella of labor. When a journalist is being violenced by an official or by the society, there are experience in our network. I'm not exaggerating if I say every day or two there's a journalist that's filing a complaint, and there's something important. They always tell us that the digital violence is also based on similar to the violence based on gender. There are other digital type of violence practiced against journalists regarding her occupation, like violating her privacy or her telephone or her laptop to get the data that she has on her devices, or threaten her with her personal relations, being a journalist. If you don't say that, we will say that. This threat has been always faced by our female journalists. That's why our colleague asked us about the recommendations. Last year, what we tried to do is to have a plan to work with the media foundations, and we think that should be a model, overall model to handle this kind of issue. We can't tell the female journalists to train how to face these threats, and when she doesn't have an environment, a safe environment to work in. And she doesn't know how to go, where to go, because sometimes her families are not supportive. Last month, one of the female journalists stated that clearly, that her husband told her to close her social media platforms. If there's a heartache from the social media, we don't have. So these are the challenges that our female journalists facing. There are a number of female journalists said that they are threatened and afraid, and they don't feel safe because of these comments. When she is a threat that I can get to you, and this threat might get actually physical violence and realistic violence. I think there should be work on legislations. There should be articles about digital violence of our journalists, and media foundation. They have a huge role. They have to have a policy of not allowing this kind of violence. And I could close up in the thought that the 190 Treaty of ILO to combat violence in work environment. Of course, Jordan has not verified this treaty. It was launched in 2019, and only 4 countries have verified this treaty. But in Jordan, there's a huge movement and great movement to asking to verify this treaty. And there's a specific article about digital violence in this treaty that might for work location. And we hope that all other legislations will install the subject of digital violence. If I'm allowed another one moment, please. The psychological support or technical support for female journalists. The first 3 or 4 months of our network, all the base was, when I have a comment as a journalist on TV, they say that you are ugly. The female targeted are always this kind of comments, either their honor or their looks. While a male is judged according to his efficiency, there has to be technical and psychological support for female journalists. At the beginning, there was this kind of debate. Is that kind of violence if someone saying that this kind of comments, is it violence? Raise awareness for the female journalists and all workers and media for this subject. Is very important subject. And also the other thing is the security safety. How many trainers do we have? How many trainers are available for media foundations for their employees? And what we are lacking actually now, receiving complaints, the system of receiving complaints in the media space, not only in cyber violence, digital violence, but in all kinds of violence.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all that rich information. So actually, Rayed, you had a hot
I just wanted, a quick, response to that, because if we're talking about solutions, and Rania, by the way, has been doing great work with that. I'll follow up on that, and I'll start with from the psychosocial one. Rania, thanks for. When I think about solutions, again, I go back to the dimensions. Please remember them. It's very important. Technical, psychosocial, and mental health, and legal and governance. With the psychosocial one, because of what Rania just said and our own findings, one of the solutions that we're experimenting with, Ruhiyya, which is that we created a manual, a special manual for the Middle East and North Africa, developed by experts from here, taking into consideration the culture and the history for organizations that provide support for the victims and survivors of gender-based violence. And this manual is mostly and mainly about the online dimension of it. And it has been tested over the last 6 months, and now we're ready. We're just looking for funding to roll it and to provide training. Any organization that provides psychosocial support to victims, we're happy to partner with them and provide that training. So this is one of the things that we're experimenting with. 2 things about the psychosocial before I move on, Ruhiyya, quickly, and allow Elodie to, is that with the psychosocial folks, we have to remember that one of the most important aspects of it is that the predators, the online attackers, they know that there are 2 circles of trust or support. The first one is the social. If anyone is attacked, the first circle they go to is family, friends, and neighbors and colleagues. And if this circle is supportive, it makes it extremely difficult for the predator to go further. And it makes the victim at that time very powerful. It helps. Unfortunately, this circle is always weak in our situation, and the predators do know that, and they break that circle. And then when you go to the official one, the government, the NGOs, you're already vulnerable. So remember the 2 circles, the social and the professional. The second aspect that we find that it's very much overlooked in our region and beyond, by the way. You want to provide psychosocial support to victims and survivors, but we found that the experts who are providing the psychosocial support to the victims are becoming themselves depressed and under pressure and burned out. So in our programming right now, we have a program to provide psychosocial support to the psychosocial experts. Imagine, this is really crazy what I'm saying, but this is because the kind of incidents that you are dealing with is heartbreaking. We have an experience from Bahrain, my colleague. She was dealing with those cases and she couldn't work or do anything for a whole month from the horrors that she witnessed and also the conversations. This is really important. Just quickly for the education, the skills, I believe that prevention is much better than response. So with the psychosocial and the legal, we're talking about response. Prevention means skills and education from the very early age. Remember I said lawyers and judges? I want to reach them before they become lawyers and judges. Go to universities, to school, talk about this. Go to the law school, have a section about this. Go to the media school and talk about something like this. And to finish, I just want to really appreciate and highlight and thank all the journalists in the room, because in my experience over the past 5 years, the most successful stakeholder or actor that allowed us to work on digital safety, resilience, and online gender-based violence is you, all of you, the journalists, who actually created public discourse about it. 5 years ago, most of us wouldn't even talk about this. Right now, because of people like all of you and Rania here, we have a public discourse about it, and because of that, I really want to thank all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rayed. Thank you for that. So Elodie, I know you've been working with social media platforms on this. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how how they're responding and you're responding?
Yes, sure. I 100% agree with the solution developed. Also with PEN America, we do also trainings and develop resources, manual, online harassment field manual, and working with newsrooms to build protocols also so that they build safer environment for their own employees. And we did research, we're doing research, and to build recommendations for social media platforms because they have also a responsibility amplifying these online harassment campaigns against journalists and particularly women journalists. And so we did a first report 2 years ago, No Excuse for Abuse, what social media platforms can do right now to better protect their user and mitigate the impact of online abuse. So we have very concrete recommendations for the platforms. For instance, creating a documenting tool, and recently Pan America and MENA, an organization of technologists, launched the Shooting into the Void, how and why the social media platforms need to revamp the reporting feature. Today, if you're harassed online, you try to report the situation on social media platforms to stop the campaign. Actually, it's very complicated, and in a moment where you can be traumatized, this is a burden on your shoulder. So we think that the social media platforms can also implement some change, and we're having discussions on this with them. I also did some research, and this is a point raised during discussions on the UN Safety Plan of Action for Safety of Journalists, the need to get escalation channels with social media platforms. I mean that if you're facing a crisis and you need to escalate because you need them to take action immediately, you need them to remove an attack, or maybe your account have been shut down, then it's complicated for civil society organizations supporting journalists and human rights defenders to get point of contact within social media platforms. And so we're a few organizations, and GFMD recently prototyped something in this field, and a few organizations are working on that. We're trying to work with social media platforms, Meta, TikTok, to make sure that when a journalist is attacked, we can get someone to reply to our questions to better support the journalists when they immediately need this kind of support. The problem is that it doesn't fit with the business model of the platforms. And this is what a recent report in Tunisia made by She Persisted revealed, that at the end of the day, there's an economical interest of the platforms to have all this hate speech and this gender-based disinformation, and so we try to ask them to comply with the human rights standards and to their own community standards, and then to better protect journalists when they need it.
Thank you, Elodie. So we have about 8 minutes left. I wanted to open it up to the audience. If you have any questions, you can come up to the microphone, please. Please, come. Come to the microphone. So you first. Oops, sorry.
Good evening. I'm a journalist from Tunis. I'd like to talk about violence against women and journalists. The problem is during the past years, all training shops targeting female journalists to protect themselves digitally and physically, and all these tools that are used. I think something important that's been forgotten in the newsrooms, there are not only female, there are also men. So these men should be trained as well to that they are familiar with this concept. There are actual crimes taking places in news rooms. There are violations, not only digital violence. So we've been receiving these workshops as women, one way or other. As female journalists, we are aware of our rights and legal rights. But our partners, the male partners who are working with us, they are decision makers. Most of them are men, but this idea, they're very important, so that, as you said, our colleague from Jordan, that when we train the women to take their run, then there's the environmental would not allow the women to obtain their rights. Also, why there's be a code of conduct in the newsroom that declaring the idea that these GBV violence crimes It's very important. It has to be in the code of conduct of that foundation or the newsroom code of conduct. It's really important to concentrate. Also, that if a woman journalist, female journalist, when she is facing hate speech and she's asking help from her foundation, there's no interaction with her complaint. Okay, they are saying bad things about you, it means you are successful. And this is something I faced in Tunis. Our suffering is crucial because all the hate speech and the talk about combating the violence against women in newsroom is only just lip talk and is not implemented actually. And what we are facing as journalists is the idea if I'm complaining for a colleague about my female boss, but he would also say, no, she's nice. Or he would say that she's a nice person, and you have to protect yourself, so you could be victimized, and your colleague, your female colleague as well, might be victimized. So.
Take another one.
Yeah, I think we should take one more question, but just to say that actually it's definitely true that we all have to work together on this. It's not just about women being trained. So yeah, please, next question. I think, okay, please, yeah.
عفوا هو مقترح أكثر من سامعيني تمام أوكي تمام هو مقترح
It's a suggestion rather than a question. I suggest that international organization working in media and about harassment and about the safety of female journalists, they help the media foundations to set a segment in their code of conduct in their foundation to create the strategy of their work regarding this issue, so that you can develop the issue about harassment, let's say the digital safety. It would be mentioned within the media foundation in case of a female journalist is being subjected or facing a problem, that the foundation should take the particular procedure. So as working in our foundation, we don't have any response when we try to file a complaint. Okay, he's a friend, he maybe didn't do that, but no, he should be restricted. I mean, his behavior should be restricted. He shouldn't, his behavior should not be turned into a friendly gesture, so that she can go to the court and protect herself. Thank you.
Thank you, please.
Hello, everybody. I wanted to shed the light on a specific thing that you were talking about. Our colleague mentioned that 70% of the female journalists mentioned that they've been subjected to hate speech or GBV violence. I'd like to take this opportunity to say that there are NGOs that are working on tools, artificial intelligence tools, to work in this field. And as in our association, we launched a tool for artificial intelligence that will help researchers, and of course these male researchers, to monitor hate speech against women in Jordan. To use these tools, for example, you can invest more in these tools. It would would open the doors for more ways to combat the violence or limits the hate speech that female journalists are being subjected to, and women in general, of course.
Thank you. I'm conscious we have only 2 minutes left. Okay, so the gentleman here, one question and then
Very quick.
Very quick, please.
مساء الخير. مساء الخير.
Go.
يا هلا شباب.
مساء الخير. وائل خطيب من مؤسسة إذاعة هولندا. عندي هون تعليق فيما يتعلق بالعنف الرقمي. حضرتكم حكيتوا عن العنف.
You talk about violence practiced against female journalists. I'm sorry, I can't hear him very well. She said about violence in social media. My question is, are there any protection methods for journalists if they face violence that are targeted with violence by their own associations? There are so many colleagues today who talk about hate speech, digital safety, and digital bullying. I think now we have to, as researchers and as workers and journalists, we have to understand these concepts. Are they authentic, or they are not Western terms that we are just using in order to be able to provide protection for the female journalists? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I'm afraid we don't have more time to take more questions. I think there's so much to discuss here, but
You can see us. They can see us.
Yeah, please see the
us,
panelists afterwards, but I just wanted to give a chance to have everyone respond at the end. So Elodie, can I turn to you for sort of very quick final words, or responding to anything that you heard?
Yes, exactly. So I believe in also you raised the point of having this conversation and on these terms and what do they mean exactly, and also to address some other topics like when it's groups of journalists against other groups of journalists. So I think this is exactly the idea here, to have this kind of conversation cross-border, as the theme of the conference sets up. And yes, we have a lot of resources and research, so we're happy to engage further on this.
May I have just one more minute, just to give everyone a chance, Rania and Raya, to just close. I plead for just one more minute. So please, Rania, just very brief final word.
بدقيقة واحدة بس بدي أعلق على
I'd like to comment on our colleague from Tunis. Quickly, I'd like to say, yes, I agree what you said, but maybe we as journalists and decision makers in media foundations ask ourselves, when an editor, chief of editor, is invited to a training for a training shop about female, they always think of women. Even male journalists, when we tell him to go have a training about GBV violence, he said, I'm not concerned with that. But of course, male are the majority of decision makers. We agree with our colleague from Iraq. The code of conduct of media foundation, there has to be clear article not to tolerate any kind of violence that our journalists are subject to.
Thank you, Ruhia. And just quickly, if anything you walk out from this room with, please remember something. Digital violence and digital safety and the harassment online is not only a technical or a legal issue. I would like to think of it as a public health issue. Believe me, what I'm seeing from the research, if we don't do anything about it, it will become a public health issue because it affects everyone and it will have catastrophic results. So let's work together in an ecosystem approach and have solutions. And thank you so much. Thank you, Ruhia.
Yeah, thank you so much to the panelists for this rich conversation. I just want to pick up on something that Rawan said yesterday about the markings on the stone over millennia. And, you know, if the voices of half the world's population are not being heard or cannot be written or recorded, then I'm not sure what kind of a future will our grandchildren or future generations will inherit. And I hope that we can work together to solve some of these problems. And thank you for letting me go over time. I'm so sorry for being a bad moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you.